So much for stopping by another live episode of Real Estate Titans. I'm your host, Greg Fowler, traveling throughout the marketplace, interviewing the top real estate professionals in our field, from realtors, lenders, builders, developers, residential or commercial, essentially gathering insight, inspiration, what really drives and motivates these top producers above and beyond everybody else in what I'd like to consider a real estate titan. Our very special guest and featured titan for today, Charles Alessio. Charles, thanks so much for taking the time. Really appreciate you, my friend.
You got it.
So, as always, I'm super excited about this one. I know so many other people are in anticipation to really get to know you better, deeper, as a man, a professional, the whole nine. So, if you don't mind, let's just jump right in.
Let's do it.
Cool. So, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, Charles.
Well, I'm married. I got a beautiful daughter at home, and I have kind of a secondary family, which is my real estate family, whether it's agents in my office or agents that I interface with out in the world. This is kind of what I'm about. I kind of eat, sleep, and breathe real estate.
Love it.
I think part of it is that I'm just really interested in the different facets that happen in a real estate transaction and the people that are involved. And that's kind of why I named my company Synergy, because if you know what the definition is, it's kind of all of these individual parts that come together to equal something bigger than the individual elements.
Wow.
So if you look at a real estate transaction, that's kind of what it's about. So I try to look at my life the same way. There's all these different things that can happen to you in your life. You got to put all these pieces together and then make something out of it.
I love that. And there's so many, talking about your family and your extended family, so everybody out there who's watching knows exactly what you're talking about.
Sure.
It really does, extend upon that particular. So what's your why, Charles? I mean, when it comes down, before I get into that, I mean, what got you into the business in the first place? What was kind of your lineage and time frame, that sort of thing?
Well, not unusual with a lot of realtors that get in the business. I had a bad real estate transaction.
Okay.
And in doing so, I kind of figured out that I could probably do this better. And oddly enough, I actually got my real estate license just to learn how the business works, not so much to be in real estate. What I learned is that you had to hang your license somewhere for a couple of years. So a friend of mine said, hey, you should check out this company. And I said, okay, but I checked out 10 others too. Because I'm kind of a researcher.
Smart man here.
So it's important to make sure that you hang your shingle at a place that you feel comfortable at. So after I interviewed a few places, I chose a place. And I got my license in July, and I had my first transaction in August. And I thought, oh, this isn't that hard if you return phone calls and, answer people's emails and call people.
Shocker.
Kind of amazing.
Yeah, and I think that that's a beautiful testament for everybody out there who's watching, whether they're new or seasoned, to really understand the basics, right? And they've never gone away. But you've seen that at a very beginning stage of your career, and look where you're at now. So what was your progression, Charles? I mean, starting as a new agent and then coming to the position that you're in now.
Well, I was in a corporate background before, so I didn't understand that when you got your real estate transaction that you kind of just did whatever. I was used to getting up in the morning, being prepared, putting a suit on, and showing up to work and doing the work. So that's what I did. I put a suit on. I used to wear ties like every day.
Wow,
and people say, why are you so dressed up? Do you have a closing today? I'm like, no, I'm going to work. And I would go to the office and make phone calls and follow up with people. And really, that's the basics of real estate. Is there's a lot of static out there about what you can do here or there, or different lead generation strategies. But the key is you just got to do the basics, which is go out and touch people.
Love that. And there's so many takeaways for everybody out there, so hopefully you're paying attention to that. So, Charles, in your progression in your career, and again, I kind of jumped the gun earlier, but what is your why? What motivates you to do what you do to the level that you do it at?
Well, I think that intrinsically, I just want to help people. And I've been in positions where, like all of us have, where I've been taken advantage of. But for whatever reason, it hasn't stopped me from wanting to reach out and help people. And I just feel like God gave me a few tools, as he gives to all of us, and I just try to accentuate those tools. I often say to my agents, God didn't put me here to be a realtor, he put me here to help people. And I just use real estate as that vehicle to meet people and help them. And sometimes I can't help them, but I try really hard to help them.
Okay.
So that's kind of my big why is we all have a purpose. I think that's what my purpose is, at least for the last 16 and a half years. That's what I thought my purpose was.
Just a little bit of time.
So that's what I've been kind of pushing.
Okay, and I think that speaks volumes for your reputation in the community, not just with other professionals, but the consumers, your clients, and a part of your extended family, if you will. You really do care. You're trying to help. You're trying to guide them through this process. And another reason why I would heavily consider you a real estate titan, Charles, it's not just because of your overall production and its impact, its caring, it's really changing people's lives in a positive way.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that. I mean, it's obvious that I have a personality that likes to be around people and do things. But I think we as a community, and I mean the real estate industry as a community, we have to really protect our industry and lean on each other. And some of us are more visible when it comes to protecting our industry and doing things, and some people are more in a supportive role. But regardless, we all need to work together to protect this really wonderful industry. What we do as real estate brokers and practitioners is super important. And, you know, I've seen those little ranking lists where it's like, you know, lawyers, sharks, and realtors at the bottom of the list. But the truth is, we do more for a community. When we help somebody buy a house and that person landscapes it, puts a washer and a dryer in there, becomes a member of a school system, all those things, they're hugely impactful. And when we sell a house for somebody, we're helping them get to the next level of their life. And realtors are a real integral part of that, and we shouldn't forget how powerful we are, because we are.
Well said, Charles. And I know everybody else is going to say, yeah, good job. I think that's important for people to know. And for the consumers that are watching, this is absolutely true. The impact on the community is huge, not just now, but leaving that legacy into the future. So well said, Charles. Now, this is a great question to kind of go into, and a lot of the viewers of this series, they love the ideas and kind of what you guys as Titans do to grow and develop your business. So Charles, if you could look back at your career thus far and pick or choose one or two things that you might have added to your business that took it from one level to the next, what does that look like?
Well, I think from a real basic level, you have to listen to people. And in order to listen to people, you must ask a question. And when you ask that question and listen to the answer and then really absorb it, then you're able to help that consumer. And I think what we do a lot of times in sales is we make a lot of assumptions. We don't listen to people. We cut people off and we try to answer the question without really internalizing what they're trying to communicate to us. So for me, that's been a very consistent, basic level way to run my businesses. Whether I'm talking to a staff person, an agent, a vendor, a customer, you got to ask the questions and then listen to the answer. And then the other thing is you got to show up. If you don't show up to work, if you're not on purpose, if you don't have a plan, if you don't know what you're going to do that day or the next month, then that's a real challenge. As an example, real estate's kind of boring for me. And I mean boring, not that it's not fun, it's just that I've developed some systems and some ideas about how I do my business. And although I'm willing to weave some newer ideas into my business model, I try to be more on the leading edge and less on the bleeding edge.
Love it.
So making sure that we're just doing the basic things. I mean, I know what my day is every day, and you should too. Whether you're a broker, an agent starting out, relaunching your career, even just an entrepreneur starting a business, you should know what you're going to do every day. And that way you can feel stable, and then you can actually help those customers. So every day I start out with a morning huddle.
Okay.
So there's a handful of agents that come in, and we talk for half an hour about not so much challenges, but how we can motivate and inspire each other. You know, and this is before I check my email or check my voicemails, because I learned a long time ago, I'm not a doctor. So no one's going to die if I don't check that voicemail.
Wise words here, all over the place.
So that's kind of where I feel like I've transcended my business, is just doing a lot of the same things that work and just keep doing them.
Okay, and there's tons of nuggets of advice for everybody to take away. I think that the wonderful idea of just listening and being genuine and really trying to help somebody with whatever issue or problem or struggle they're dealing with, and getting to that point I think is crucial. So, you know, the 2 ears, 1 mouth sort of scenario, I think a lot of people have heard that, but they don't live by it. So that's huge.
Yeah. You totally understand this. I mean, I've seen you in a room with people and just how you engage people and how you talk to people, your genuine nature, because you are really trying to listen to them. And I think that's what kind of sets you apart from other people, is that you're really willing to understand where people come from.
Well, thanks.
So I applaud you for that.
Well, I appreciate that. Hey, I'll take that any day.
See
of the
how I
week,
turned that
everybody.
around?
This was good. This was good. He's a really nice guy, I gotta say. So, but then secondarily, knowing your day, I just watched, it was 2 nights ago, and it was on YouTube, and it was a breakdown of Mark Cuban's day.
Oh, sure.
And literally from when he wakes up to when he goes to sleep, and he has it down packed. He knows exactly what he does every single day, 7 days a week, and just exactly as you described. And I think that that's so crucially important. So that was some really, really good takeaways. So let's go into the next portion of this, and this is the tricky part, Charles.
Uh-oh.
This is the challenge question. So when it comes down to it, we all deal with challenges in our lives, whether it's in the past, now, or into the future. No one's exempt. But it's not so much what happens, but how we overcome. I really find it makes the difference. So if you'd be open to share a challenge that you dealt with in your life with everybody here, and you became a stronger man because of it, what does that look like for you?
Well, I mean, it's a story that I don't tell a lot of people, but when I was a kid, I was in a foster home. So not only was I in a foster home, but I broke my hip. When I was a kid, Evel Knievel was a thing. Okay. And back then, swing sets had really plastic, slick seats. And we were jumping lawn chairs, and in the process of doing that, I broke my hip. Oh, so as a young person, it was pretty devastating. And I remember being in a body cast, and I remember not being immobile, and I remember having to be homeschooled and all that stuff, and it was very terrifying and frustrating at the same time, because you can't walk around and you're just having some real challenges. And I remember the kids playing football in the street, and I was sleeping on a couch that was right by a door, so I would always want the door open so I could hear what was going on outside. Wow. And when I got that body cast off, I wasn't able to walk, so I kind of had to scooch around. And so basically what I'm trying to say is that I went through all these different elements of frustration and challenge and being in strange homes and so on and so forth. But the progression happened because I was patient. Mm-hmm. Although as a kid it was really hard to be patient, but I look back now and remember how patient I really was, because those kids that I listened to in the street playing Nerf football, I sat out there once I was able to get my body outside, and I sat on the curb and I just watched them play and got to know them. And then finally I was able to kind of stand and then kind of hobble around, mm-hmm. and so on and so forth. And finally I would get the kids to let me play football with them in the street, but I was always chosen last. So you know what that's like, some of you. And as I got older, and I realized that I didn't need to use that as an excuse for frustration or being powerless. I used it as an opportunity to say, something bad happened to me, I overcame it, and I was able to get to the next level. And believe it or not, I'm only 5'7", but I played high school and college football.
Love it.
And I worked hard. I held many positions on the team. I was the holder for extra points and field goals. I was a punt returner, I was a kick returner, and I was a starting wide receiver. Wow. So I'm a testament of things can happen to you, but then you can learn from them and get to the next level. And Greg, let me tell you, everyone has these things. Your pain and frustration in past is your past, not mine. Right. So your pain that you went through, or anyone goes through, is their thing, no matter how big or small. And we just have to understand that things are gonna happen to us, but you gotta overcome them. But nothing helps you overcome them faster than when you have a good family.
Well said, Charles. And there's so much for people to learn and take away from that. And I know that a lot of people watching, that's going to hit them hard, because whether it's physical ailments, or if it's family loss, or if it's financial struggles, it is there. But you, as a young boy dealing with something like that, a lot of them would just say, forget it, defeat them, that sort of thing, change a path. You literally said, forget it. I'm going to play football, and I'm going to play it to the high school and college level. I'm not going to let anything slow me down. And I think that that's the message that everybody really needs to take away.
We're all powerful. I mean, that's one of my favorite words, is powerful. Inside yourself is the ability to overcome challenges. I'm not saying forget what happened. I'm not saying not be sad or angry or frustrated. I'm just saying that ultimately you can dwell on things forever and live in the past, or you can say, I'm learning from this past and I'm going to be powerful and I'm going to move forward.
Love it.
That's how you do it.
Yes, thanks so much for sharing that, Charles. I know it's not
Yeah,
easy
you
to
bet.
do, so everybody, hopefully
Thanks.
they appreciate that. So let's go a little bit softer. This is actually one of my favorite questions. So if you could go back in time and give your young self a piece of advice or two, in any stage of your life, it could be a year ago, it could be young Charles.
Sure.
What does that look like for you? What would you say to yourself?
That's a very interesting question. I'm going to kind of say something funny, but
Okay.
you're going to follow me here. As a young person, I would tell men especially, talk to girls more.
Okay. Elaborate, Charles. Give everybody what you're going for.
Talk to girls more. Here's why. The ability to make relationships with people, to have rich relationships with people, require some dialogue. And the hardest people to do that with is girls.
Sure.
When you're a young person, girls are very mysterious. Well, they kind of still are. But,
Yeah.
but they're very mysterious and they're kind of almost unapproachable. And young men have a tendency to be fearful about that. But the truth is that some of my strongest, richest relationships are with other women. Whether it be a staff person, whether it be a friend of mine, whether it be somebody I went to high school or college with. These relationships that I had with women taught me to be a little bit more nurturing, a little softer, a little bit more understanding, a little bit more organized, a little bit cleaner.
Sure.
And I think that if a young man is able to talk to a young woman and be able to understand where she comes from, it's going to help you be a much better human being. Women have a tendency, as I mentioned before, to be a little bit more nurturing and understanding. Men are a little bit more, straightforward. We're simpler creatures.
Sure.
And so we need that more sophisticated relationship. So that's what I would tell myself is talk to the girls more so that you can be a better grown-up.
I love that, and I know that there's so many guys out there that are watching this right now, and we've all been in that situation where it's that awkward conversation. You want to talk to her, but you don't know what to do. But I think that it goes further than that too, because I have a lot of people asking me about networking events, things like that. As an adult, it starts as a kid, and then as you grow, and those awkward tendencies of going into a room full of strangers as an adult and trying to spark up a conversation with a complete stranger, it's very fearful for a lot. So here's the advice that I would always give to everybody. I said, look, as nervous as you might be, best believe that there are a huge population in that room that are just as nervous as you are.
Absolutely.
Right?
But they're willing to put themselves out there for the opportunity to network, learn something, or make a friend.
Sure.
And so you're 100% right. These traits, these characteristics that we develop as young people actually affect us 15 years down the road. So if you're a 12-year-old, you're making decisions and creating actions today that are going to affect you farther down the road. But it's hard to realize that. We don't get wisdom until we're about 40.
Okay.
All right, so you got a little while to go.
I'm almost there.
But you start getting wisdom and you start looking back about, hey, I wish I would have done this, or here's what I would have done different. But you just be you. Put yourself out there, make relationships with people, talk to people, ask people questions, listen to their answers, and see if there's something that you can do to kind of connect.
Love it. Huge advice. And that's not just for young Charles, but that's for everybody else who's watching, myself included. So great stuff. Now let's go into one of the favorite sections of the series, which happens to be the feeding of the mind. There's a lot of viewers of this series who want to know what the Titans are doing or have done to grow their mind, to really feed the fuel to the fire to their business. So Charles, if you could look at books you're reading, podcasts you're listening to, or influencers or coaches on social media, what are you feeding your mind?
Sure. Well, I have a lot of friends that read, and they love to quote things in books, and I believe that they believe what they're reading and that it's important to them, and so I certainly don't want to minimize that.
No.
At least twice a month, we have a dinner party at our house.
Okay.
And we invite certain people that we feel like would be a good mix together, but also that we're going to get something out of and that hopefully we can offer. What I offer is great food.
Good man.
What I hope to get is people having great opportunities to learn about other people.
Okay.
Even in my office today with 50 agents, they don't all really know each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to take opportunities to invite certain people together so that they can learn some stuff. And that's where I really get my nourishment from, is those rich relationships, those developments that I get by asking people questions about scenarios, getting to know them a little bit better on a personal level.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly keep reading and keep listening to stuff and keep going to conventions and
Sure.
doing all those things. I just really feel like that human contact, when you break bread with somebody, it's real personal. You know, when I cook for people, it's from the heart. I mean, I try to cut every piece of vegetable perfect. I try to make the flavor as amazing as possible. Not so that they'll compliment me. I want them to remember that 8 people sat around a table and got closer.
Wow.
So that's how I do it.
Okay, and that's a huge way to feed your mind if people see that, and you are the first Titan on the series who's ever broken it that way. I mean, it's books, it's podcasts, it's influencers, but truly coming to the human nature, just getting in front of people and having interesting, fun, thoughtful, provoking conversations over some pretty awesome food. Yeah, it's hard to beat. Hard to beat.
How could you resist that? I
Yeah.
mean, you're going to a great place around great people and eating great food. I can't think of a better scenario. You decide.
Well said, well said. So that's awesome, fantastic into that. And I think that everybody maybe should start having their own dinner parties, have some people over at the house. You know, maybe someday you'll be lucky enough to hang out with Charles at his place, get some good grub, you know.
I wonder how many people are going to text me and invite themselves over for dinner.
His information is going to be listed below, everybody, just in case. So thanks for sharing that, Charles, and that's really, really good advice for everybody else. So then let's go into, you know, the end or the capper of this particular episode, and there's so much data, there's so much information that everybody can take away, but this is really to sum you up as a man, as a brand. If there's a quote or a mantra that you might live by in your life, what does that look like for Charles D'Alessio?
You know, I don't know the mantra or the quote. I will tell you that really finding out who you are and then interfacing with other people in a fashion that feels good, that makes a lot of sense, is really what sums up my life. I couldn't imagine being on an island by myself. But what I can imagine is being on an island with lots of people and trying to coalesce us all together and doing my part to be part of the collective so that we can be better. People ask me all the time, you know, what's the silver bullet for this, or how do you solve this problem, how do you do that? What I've always found is when you put your heads together, you can solve almost everything. So maybe that's my saying, is put your heads together and you can solve everything.
Yeah, that's
because it's really true. As a broker, as a CEO, as a husband, as a father, as a brother, I just try to do the best that I can with my life, and I try not to put myself in a box of I just live it a certain way. I do certain things a certain way, but I'm open to things too. So I guess that's where I'm at with my life and our business and how we do things.
Love it, Charles. And it speaks volumes about you as a man, as a brand. I think that's beautiful. So I know that everybody took tons of information. Thanks so much for taking the time, Charles. You are an official real estate titan, my friend.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was an absolute honor and pleasure. So hopefully everybody got as much out of information as I did. Thanks again so much for your love and support, your time and effort. Live every Tuesday, every Friday, a different titan, a different location. We'll catch you guys on the next live episode of Real Estate Titans. Take care. And we are